Mr. President, I rise on a personal and collective privilege. Last Friday, I went home to my beloved city and province of Cagayan de Oro and Bukidnon, and I was greeted with complaints from residents and several businessmen, mostly MSMEs. This is about the ever-increasing electricity and power rates in northern Mindanao and many parts of the country. I actually have with me here a statement from the Oro Chamber on the high power rates that they released recently. One of their complaints, for example, in Cagayan de Oro, is that the electricity rates, for instance, from 10 pesos and 62 centavos in January of this year has increased, and I have the rate increase here. February, it increased by, from 10.62, it went to 10.77. On March, it went up to 11.82. On April, it was 12 pesos and 65 centavos. On May, it was 13 pesos and 98 centavos. On June, it was 13 pesos and 98 centavos. And July, it is now 14.19. This is industrial rates, Madam President. It increased from 10 pesos and 60 centavos on January, which is usually the average rate, to about 14 pesos on July. So that's almost an increase of how many percent? My dear minority floor leader is a mathematics genius, much better than me. That's almost 40%, no? Almost 40% increase. A little less than 40% increase in 6 months, Madam President. And many other areas in the country have also increased. To give an example, Bukidnon, a residential consumer paid 15.15 pesos per kilowatt hour of June, and in July, he pays 16 pesos and 56 centavos per kilowatt hour. That is a 1.41 peso increase, or a 9.3% increase in just a 1 month period, Madam President. To give you an idea, my dear colleagues, the residential power rates for the following electric cooperatives are also quite high. Though earlier, the one I mentioned earlier was Sepalco, that's a private company. But these are for electric cooperatives. And if you could look at the list, Buseco at 16 pesos at 31 centavos. This is in Bukidnon. Moresco in Misamis Oriental, where my dear minority floor leader and I come from, as well as being from northern Mindanao. It is 13.49. And in Moresco too, it's 16.90. In Laneco, it is 16.69 pesos per kilowatt hour. In Soleco, it is 19 pesos per kilowatt hour. In Leeco, I believe this is in Region 8. Yung Leeco is 18 pesos, 18.94 pesos. Meron pang Bileco at 18 pesos and 77 centavos. And the list is there, flashed on your screen, Madam President, my dear colleagues. This scenario is replicated, and I know Senator J.V. Estrada, Senator J.V. Ejercito approached me earlier and mentioned that was the complaint in Nueva Ecija. In San Jose, it was 18, from 9 pesos to 18 pesos per kilowatt hour. That is a 100% increase of electricity rates. Grabe po, Madam President. I, as a micro, small, and medium enterprise promoter of, and of course, advocate, feel that so many of these industries are now suffering because of the high electricity rates. Admittedly, ang sabi po nila, nung kinausap po namin ibang electric cooperatives, and I want to put on record, hindi po lahat ay kasalanan nila. Kasi ang sabi po nila, ang generation charge nila ay napakataas. And when you break that down, and I know if Senator Sherwin Gatchalian was here to listen, there is a breakdown, and we have the chairman of the Committee on Energy here, Senator Raffy Tulfo. There is a breakdown in your bill on the amounts that to be paid. Masyado daw mataas ang generation charge. Because, ang sabi daw nila, mataas daw ang presyo ng crudo sa international market, as well as the weakening of the peso with the US dollar and other foreign currencies. And based on the EPIRA, the Electric Power Industry Reform Act, these costs can be passed on to the consumers. The question is, all the cost will be passed on to the consumers? Paano naman yung mga malalaking kumpanya na napakaganda po ang nilang net profits in the end of the year? But there are other questions that beg for more answers, Madam President. First, were these increases in electricity rates a result of higher fuel costs and foreign exchange variance? Were they approved by the Energy Regulatory Commission? Because parang napakahirap naman paniwalaan dahil ang alam ko, pag meron po kayong adjustment sa electricity rates, supposedly, dumadaan yan sa butas ng karayom pagdating po sa Energy Regulatory Commission. Parang wala naman akong bilang isang MSME din, operator sa Mindanao, wala din po kaming notice sa mga hearings kung naganap ba ang mga hearings na ito. Dahil dapat naman siguro, ma'am, Madam President, my dear colleagues, magkakaroon po dapat ng hearing ang mga consumers and stakeholders kung ganito kataas ang pag-increase ng electricity rates. Pangalawa, assuming that these rates were approved by the ERC, Energy Regulatory Commission, who audits these generating companies to make sure that they are declaring the right rate increases? For instance, a coal power plant in Northern Mindanao, hindi ko na lang babanggitin dahil marami po doon, is charging an incremental currency exchange rate adjustment and passing it on to the consumers, Madam President. However, the sister company operates a coal mine within the country. So hindi po imported yung coal mine na yan. Yan po ay local. So kung ang coal production ay local, how can we be assured that the coal that they are using is imported? Hence, the rate increases on forex and expensive coal that is being imported from other countries and not coming from the coal mine within the country. Isn't it about time that, or to have the shift as well? Madam Chair, and I know you'd like this because our Madam President Pro Tem is a believer like me in renewable energy. Isn't it about time that we shift to renewable energy? No expensive fuel needed. We can use water resources, hydro, our air resources for wind turbines, and also sunlight, which is free for everyone to use. Third or fourth, Madam President, when does the wholesale electricity spot market or WESM operate in Mindanao? Matagal na po natin hinihingi po yan. Wala pa yatang WESM na umaandar sa Mindanao. And once it starts to operate in Mindanao, could it at least cushion or lessen the impact of the electricity rate increase as the distribution utilities have alternatives to buy electricity from cheaper sources? Give you an example, Madam President. We had just recently passed in 2 Congresses the More Power franchise. Initially, the power rates in Iloilo were the highest in the Visayas at 14 to 15 pesos per kilowatt hour. Now I'm happy to announce it's less than 9 pesos per kilowatt hour, 8.75 if I'm not mistaken, per kilowatt hour. Because they rely on the WESM within Mindanao, Madam President. Hinahanap po nila pinakamurang contracted price for that month para yan din po ang maibibigay nilang kuryente sa kanilang mga consumers in these areas, lowering their rates. For example, a hydropower plant, if we had WESM, Ginoong Pangulo, a hydropower plant in Northern Mindanao selling electricity for 6 pesos per kilowatt hour, much lower than the 10.26 pesos that is being bought from the coal-fired power plants. So, I know that the Mindanao grid is not yet connected to the Visayas and Luzon grids, but can a Mindanao-wide setup for WESM be instituted for the meantime, immediately? That way they can choose from these low-cost generation systems. Maganda pa para sa environment, di ba po, Madam President? Ito po ay perfect fight against climate change. We should move to that shift, Wari. Ginoong Pangulo, lugmok na po ang ating mga kababayan sa kahirapan na dulot sa COVID-19. crude or fuel price increase, inflation sa kawalan ng trabaho, at dumadagdag pa po ang electricity price increases lalo na sa rural areas. Mabuti pa nga ho ang nasa service areas ng Meralco kapag may di patas na rate increase or charges sa Meralco, agad-agad nagfa-file pong petition sa korte ng iba't ibang consumer groups and sinasang-ayunan ng korte ang electricity consumers and they put a stop and a hearing to these rate increases. Pero sa ating mga kababayan, katulad namin ni Senator Koko Pimentel, Senator Bongo, Bato de la Rosa, yung mga taga-probinsya dito, lahat po kami ay ngayon po ay talagang hirap na hirap sa napakataas nating rates. Pero kung ating mga kababayan naman ay tinatanggap na lamang po nila ang ipapataw na electricity rates and increases ng mga generating companies at distribution utilities. Hook, line, and sinker. Kung hindi ko nga ito napansin, dahil full disclosure, I'm also in industrial ice production, alam mo naman, isa sa pinakamalaking expense ng industrial ice is electricity. Or else you will just like me and Senator JV have the same business. We're both in industrial ice. Alam po namin, pag walang kuryente, bottling water na lang po tayo. Tubig na lang ibebenta natin kasi wala po tayong yelo. Nung napansin ko nga itong generation rates na ito, I beg to ask the question, what about the others? Medium enterprise. Kawawa naman po yung mga small and micro. Yung malilit po ng mga negosyante. Wala pong halos nagpa-file ng petition sa korte on behalf of electricity consumers in the rural areas. And that is the fact of life. We now have a new chairperson in the ERC who happens to be a dear friend of mine, Attorney Mona Lisa Di Malanta, who is known to me as a fair and hard-working professional. I hope she goes and looks into this as soon as possible. I know she has a lot on her plate when she assumes office. Kaya nais po natin matanong ang ERC at iba pang mga concerned agencies kung ano na ang kasagutan nila sa mga tanong natin. I think it's also time, when my speech is referred to the committee of our distinguished colleague, Senator Rafi Tulfo, Idol Rafi, that we have a hearing and ask also our dear Secretary, Secretary Popo Lotilla, who is a good, I'd say, is also professional and a good public servant as I've experienced his public service in the past, and he knows the industry. Paano ba natin maibaba ang presyo ng kuryente given these global situations that we are facing today? Kasi hindi po kaya ng ating mga kababayan, Madam President, na ganitong klaseng electricity rates, na kung gusto po natin magkaroon ng higher GDP growth rates, no industry will move here to us. They may move to other countries. Unfortunately, that has happened already because Vietnam, Malaysia, and other countries in the Southeast Asian corridor have cheaper rates than us. Remember that many companies are moving out of China for whatever reason it may be. And the foreign chambers have told me about this. Unfortunately, we are not catching the wave, and other countries are catching the wave. Not to mention our kababayans who are suffering because of these high electricity rates. How can we help our kababayans, Madam President, alleviate the situation as a result of these unabated electricity rate increases? Madam President, it has been 21 years since we passed the EPIRA. If we need to review and amend it to respond to the condition of the times, we are prepared to do so. It is now ripe for review. No less than our beloved President had asked this in his State of the Nation address, because I know one of the campaign promises of our President when we were with him in Unity is to bring down the cost of rates, power rates. Kailangan po natin maging mas makatao at patas ang presyuhan ng kuryente para mas matulungan natin makabangon ang ating mga kababayan. I hope that we, the Senate of the people, could stand hand in hand on this issue. Maraming salamat po, Madam President.
We acknowledge and are grateful to the Senate President for delivering a timely, relevant, and comprehensive speech on electricity rates in the region where he is from. Thank you, Mr. Senate President.
Madam President,
Majority Leaders recognized.
the distinguished lady from Iloilo and the Republic of the Philippines, the chairperson of the Committee on Public Service, would like to ask some questions. I move that she be recognized. Senator Grace Poe.
Senator Grace Post recognized.
Yes. Likewise, Madam President, I'm grateful to our Senate President for bringing up this issue that is quite urgent. It is quite alarming and also very unfair that the price of electricity in Metro Manila is significantly smaller or lower than the price in the province. And in fact, the power supply in many areas in the country is also intermittent. It's not steady. They experience a lot of power outages and the service is poor. I would like to ask, Mr. President, would our Senate President, the gentleman from Bukidnon, tell us, there is in the Bayanihan, I mean in the train law, a suspension of taxes when it comes, if the price of a barrel of oil is over $80. But in this case, I don't know if there's such a provision that we can have if the price of the supply of electricity because of the world market supply has increased dramatically. If there's any provision that can give, what do you call this, consideration in the taxes being imposed on electricity. Is that something that we can explore? How much do we pay in taxes per kilowatt hour, for example?
Well, first of all, thank you for your questions, Madam Chairperson of the Public Service Committee. It was in your committee that we were able to pass a few franchises that was able to bring down considerably the rates of particular areas in the country. And I want to also, just to add to your mentioning about Metro Manila, the Meralco rate is down by 27 pesos per kilowatt hour for this month at 9 pesos and 54 centavos. Can you imagine? That's almost half. That's like half the rates of other provinces. Kaya swerte po ng ating mga kababayan dito sa Metro Manila. On the taxes, I know for a fact, Madam President, we have VAT.
Right.
VAT is being paid by our consumers. And unfortunately, pag tumataas po yung generation charge, tumataas din yung VAT na binabayaran. Because if the coal-fired power plant will say, oh, wala kami magawa, yung forex exchange napakataas, yung presyo ng coal napakataas, they'll pass it on to the consumers, double jeopardy po tayo. Because we also increase the VAT payment at 12%. Hindi mawawala yun. On the other taxes, I'm sure we have excise tax on fuel. It is also, of course, part of the mix, the energy mix, because some of the plants are fuel-based, and et cetera, et cetera. I know Senator Sherwin knows more about the breakdown on the billing to the consumers. But walang mechanismo na yun, Madam President, that we have that can mitigate that by coming up with an exemption on taxes. But also, we're also worried about the fiscal space, no?
Correct.
We also want to make sure na may pera pa rin yung gobyerno natin for social services.
Yeah, Madam President, actually there's supposedly ERC proposes to remove the 12% VAT on generation charge. I'm not sure how true this is. So I think that it is also quite important that we call for a hearing immediately to hear from the ERC and listen to the views of the DOF, if this is something that we can afford at this time. But aside from this, I would also like to ask, why is it that private companies can provide lower rates than cooperatives? I know that you mentioned the cooperatives were saying because the generation charge for them is much higher. Can you explain why this is the case?
In many cooperatives, your honors, And also full disclosure, because I used to be with a power company. I sold off my shares to Vivant Energy, but I'm no longer majority of a power plant company. But in most cases, prior to the administration of President Duterte, most of the contracts, and my dear colleague can correct me if I'm wrong, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, were done through bilateral contracts. In other words, if you're putting up a power plant, kausapin mo yung electric cooperative, yun na yun. Basta dadaan sa ERC yun, and ERC will agree to the rates, hindi siya supposedly disadvantageous to our consumers, may hearing yan eh. Before the power rates can be approved, may hearing yan with the ERC. So pinapatawag yung ERC, pumupunta yan sa probinsya, pagpunta sa probinsya, may hearing dyan, and then the ERC will set now the price. Ito lang, you can only claim this price for this product of what you're selling, whether it's solar, wind, bunker, or coal. Yun na yun. Unfortunately po, there's fine print. And the fine print kasi it says, the fuel charges can be passed on to the consumer. Eh, nung araw, magkano lang naman ng diesel, magkano lang naman ng bunker, magkano ng coal. Dati yan ang pinakamurang source of electricity, yung coal-fired power plant. As a matter of fact, naging antiquated na yan because people were going into RE, so nobody was anymore going back to coal. Then all of a sudden, the coal markets of Indonesia, coal markets around certain areas, they stopped sending coal, exported coal abroad for whatever reason. There's a ban on imported coal from Indonesia or importing coal from Indonesia. So nagka-supply problem, biglang tumaas ang presyo ng coal. The problem is, can't we at least come up with a percentage? Lahat ba yan ay i-absorb ng ating mga kababayan? Kasi kung lahat yan, di abot, kung taas ng taas ang presyo ng coal, di abutin po tayo ng 25 pesos per kilowatt hour eh. Lahat na ng negosyo magsisira na. Because at that rate, you cannot recoup if you're a business that utilizes a large portion of your cost with electricity.
Mr. President, Madam President, it came to my attention in the past, like cooperatives, as you said, get their supply from a power company and they're locked in on a certain contract for so many years.
Yes.
And that's the reason why they say they cannot compete with private companies who are just coming in now because the private companies were able to negotiate at a lower generation cost or supply. Maybe
because also, Madam President, if I may interject, they put in a CSP now, a competitive selection process. And it has to be now all the other players who have cheaper rates can now compete for a particular contract with the DU, which is a distribution utility.
So, I mean, speaking on behalf, let's say, of cooperatives, right? So they're locked in with this agreement, so they're not able to supply the same rate as what the private companies have under the CSP. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, but, this, I believe in the sanctity of contracts. However, when the public good is affected, maybe we should start reviewing all of these contracts that they've entered into. Or, I mean, if they decide to renegotiate so that they can provide cheaper electricity, better service, I don't think anybody should be locked into a punishing agreement. And especially when the brunt is being borne by the consumers.
Actually, Madam President, our distinguished colleague is absolutely correct. That's what happened to More Power in Iloilo.
Right.
Because the previous DU had very expensive contracts, and they were saying, but we cannot cancel these contracts. We have contracts, it's bilateral contracts. So what had happened was, under the More Power agreement that we approved here, More Power was going to give a competitive rate to the consumers. In other words, they will also provide 5 pesos cheaper per kilowatt hour.
That's right.
Obviously, everybody moved to More Power for that particular case. They were very lucky because in that case, Your Honors, the old electric company, it's a company, not a cooperative, the franchise expired. So
Right.
they were trying to apply for a new franchise. And so basically More Power did not take over a franchise area. They were taking over particularly an area that had a lapsed franchise or expired franchise. The franchisee who was applying again, reapplying, could not convince anybody, not even our former minority floor leader here, Senator Frank Dillon, of their good practices in Iloilo because everybody was, and that's the reason why I also have an industrial ice plant. We moved it from Iloilo to outside of Iloilo because we could not, there was no way we could make money with the rates they were charging in Iloilo City. But when we were able to grant More Power, the franchise, the new franchise, they were now had a free hand. They had a free hand to choose cheaper electricity, and I think they're getting from the spot market, the Western spot market in the Visayas. And they're choosing from very low cost power generation companies. And that's why they're so cheap now. They're one of the cheapest. And I give credit where credit is due. It was from your committee, and all our colleagues were able to make that decision together with the House of Representatives and their representatives. So you're absolutely correct. We have to review that because some of these contracts are 25 years, 15 years.
Yes.
So if the rates of coal continue to go up and fuel continue to go up, they're bound to that contract, unfortunately, unless we can come up with, and we have legal luminaries here like our minority floor leader, who can come up with an idea on how we can temper the rising cost of these generation
Actually,
facilities.
Mr. President, it has come to my attention just with the discussion today that almost every increase is passed on to the consumers. Like if they have to buy anything, if the price in the world market is higher, the exchange rate of the dollars is higher, that's passed on to the consumers.
That's correct.
So ever since, this has been the practice by cooperatives as well as the private companies, right? So the
Yes.
consumers bear the brunt of the increase.
But
That's
I'd
why
just like
there's
to put on record, Madam President, Ma'am, Madam Chairperson, also private companies have contracts. There were several private DUs that also had these contracts.
That's right, Mr. President. But what I'm saying is, it's almost no risk to the suppliers, to the providers. It's always to the consumers. So there's no excuse, for example, for cooperatives to have bad service, faulty infrastructure, because they always recoup their costs.
Yes.
And yet, that's not the case. Even in Batangas, so close to us, considering, sometimes it's been ever since the pandemic, it's become the favorite vacationing spot of those coming from Manila. They can't even supply power in most areas there for a 24-hour period.
That's true.
So what have they been doing with the money that they've been receiving?
Collecting.
They haven't been spending on improving their services or capital expenses. So I think, Mr. President, I'm glad that we have a strong committee chairman for the Committee on Energy. There are really a lot of special interest groups here that have probably not been as judicious as they should have been. And now the consumers are the ones suffering for it. We definitely have to review EPIRA. Yes, it liberalized the power sector, but then also I think we should put some safeguards.
Yes.
And also some, what do you call this? I guess a checklist of what they're really supposed to provide, just like in franchises when we grant them. If you're not able to provide continuous service for an X number of days, you'll be penalized or your franchise can be canceled. So these are my thoughts, Madam President, and I'd like again to thank our Senate President for bringing this very urgent measure up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Poe.
Yes, Madam President, we were just talking about the list here. Madam President, there are a lot of colleagues of ours who wanted to ask questions in this very timely, privileged speech given by our Senate President. At this juncture, Madam President, I move that we recognize our minority leader to interpolate our Senate President, Senator Koko Pimentel.
The Minority Leader, Senator Aquilino Pimentel, is recognized.
Yes, if my silingan, our Senate President, would yield to just a few clarificatory questions, because like the general public, I am pretty much not familiar with the with the complexities of how they charge our electric bills, Mr. President. With your
Yes,
permission.
I'd be honored to be interpolated by my distinguished neighbors, Silingan in Cagayan de Oro and Bukidnon. And as a matter of fact, the rates that I mentioned were in our area.
Yes,
So I
yes.
know his heart is with us when we want to get to the bottom of these high rates. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, actually, Mr. President, I randomly asked for a billing statement from the utility that you mentioned, the private utility that you mentioned. And the subject, the billed household, actually confirmed that from their billing increased by 2,000 pesos in just 1 month. So
can you imagine
2,000.
that?
Residential po ito, but I think
Residential,
you cited rates, industrial rates, di ba?
Yes.
So I'm looking at the
Mas mahal po, actually mas mahal po ang residential rates
Residential,
kaysa industry.
And from that billing statement, I looked at the charges, and then I looked at the weight. So, generation and transmission charges were revenues ang tawag nila. Generation and transmission revenues are lumped together, and this amount to around 70% of the billing. And then distribution revenues, siguro charges actually yan, charges yan, around 20%.
Yes.
So yun, and then subsidies, less than 1%. Government taxes, 9%. 9%, and universal charges around 1%. Andun na. So, from a randomly picked statement of account po ito from in Cagayan de Oro City. So siguro, if this were to hold true, ganun po yung ano. So, if we are to look for areas where we can lessen, yun na yun. So, government taxes, 9%. So,
Question.
kung gusto ng gobyerno magbigay ng konting, anong tawag mo doon, relief from expenses po ng ating mga kababayan, we could look at government taxes at 9%. And then tignan siguro natin itong medyo may mali sa billing nito, because I've been informed by my staff that generation and transmission charges should be separated under the law. Pero in this particular billing which I am examining, lumped together, so and it's 70% of the total billing. So silipin po siguro natin yun, talagang himayin natin.
Dapat po, Madam President, that's unbundled. They have to point out what is the transmission and generation.
Yes, opo.
Separate yan.
So, and then, nagtataka lang ako, Madam President, kasi all the while, akala ko, sobra tayo sa Mindanao eh. Our generation of power, sobra sa peak demand.
Yes.
So how do you explain to the people na tataas pa ang billing nyo, sobra ang aming generation of power? So anong nangyari? Tinatapon, nawawala ba yung sobrang generated power?
I'm
Saan
so
pupunta?
thankful that the good gentleman from Cagayan de Oro, my dear colleague from Northern Mindanao, asked that question, because it is the question that was raised by our good chairperson of the Committee on Public Services. Marami po kasi sa kanila na pako na sa mga kontrata. And then we have a lot of hydropower resources. But unfortunately, the contracts went to the bigger coal-fire power plants, which is now suffering from the high cost of coal prices and foreign exchange rates. So yan pong nangyayari doon. And you're absolutely correct. Paano natin sila masasabihan na meron tayong oversupply? Lalo na I mentioned to my distinguished minority floor leader, Madam President, earlier, that it's usually in the summer months na nagmamahal ang presyo ng kuryente sa atin, sa Mindanao. Ngayon po, in the middle of the rainy season, grabing ulan dun, pero ang sobrang mahal naman ang presyo ng kuryente. So, that's why it was raised, the concern was raised to me, even with the Cagayan de Oro Chamber of Commerce, why this is happening. Although they agree, Madam President, my distinguished colleague, that a lot of it has to do with imported coal, presyo ng coal na yon, presyo ng forex natin ay napakataas. Pero and if I may be allowed to read or pass through our friends in Cagayan de Oro Chamber, they're really pushing that we have to have more options, enough options to harness renewable energy, wind, wave action, tidal wave, solar, so that we can combat the imported fuel and coal that we have to get from other countries. Yan ang tinutulak nila, which begs me to ask that question also during our committee hearing. Will the new Secretary Popolotilla, be amenable that we start focusing also on RE para it's cheaper kasi libre naman po ang tubig. Libre naman po ang init ng araw. Ang lakas ng hangin ay libre din po yan. Unfortunately, these electric companies can no longer contract kasi oversubscribed na po sila. Sobra-sobra pa yung subscription nila. Alam ni Ginoong Gatchalian po yan, na marami po, naghiring po kami dyan. And yung problema, oversubscribed na sila with, let's say for example, a particular electric cooperative only needs 15 megawatts. Ang subscription nila, abot ng 18 megawatts to 20. In other words, the consumer is paying 20 megawatts. And yet, very expensive ang generation nito. Na oversubscribed nila. They were, nakapako na po sila. They came up with contracts that they cannot unbundle themselves from. And as a lawyer, you know that that's very important. So we have to figure that out, Your Honors, Madam President, my distinguished minority floor leader, how we can help them because ganun na lang, we'll just lay back and take it like it is. Hindi naman pwede siguro.
Kaya nga, I wanted to interpolate after the interpellation of the former chairman of our Committee on Energy.
Maybe he can join us, Your Honor.
He could, provide us with
information.
Insights also on why is this happening. So yung example po ba ng ating Senate President is that electric co-op has a certain jurisdiction. You say 15 megawatts po ang actual demand, and then the electric co-op has contracted for 18 megawatts.
Sobra na.
Which it has to pay, and then siyempre subdivide the cost with its subscribers. Ganun po ba yun? So
okay lang po yan.
maybe we can take a look at,
Yes.
siguro I think there are only 100 electric co-ops, if I'm not mistaken, a little over 100. So
115, I think.
siguro pwedeng pagtiyagan, isa-isahin po natin at then the actual demand,
Yes.
then the contracted capacity, then the length, and then we can interview each one why. Kung masyadong malayo po kung masyadong malayo yung contracted capacity sa actual demand, and then they're letting now their subscribers pay for it, tanongin natin isa-isa, kailangan siguro pagtiyagaan na po ito kasi we do not know Hindi natin alam. So, if I'm not mistaken, if more than 100, pwede natin pagtiyagaan po ito. Tanongin, isa-isa.
Yes.
I hope the Senate President and my colleagues, especially the new chairman of the Committee on Energy, is amenable to this idea. Mr. President,
We totally agree. We should review these rates and also give them opportunities to contract elsewhere. Kasi yung kamay po nila nakatali Maybe, and I don't know if my distinguished colleague Senator Gatchalian will join us in the conversation. Pwede ba kaya na we give them, if we amend the IPIRA, that okay, the contract is sacred, andyan yung contract. But due to the fact that there are high electricity rates, can we scale down their delivery and open yourself up to the West M? We can get now direct Agus or Pulangi hydropower plant or other like Headcore, which is also hydropower, and contract with them para mas mababa. So in other words, hindi mo naman tina-terminate totally yung kontrata kasi kawawa din naman yung mga kumpanya yun. They built the plant with the idea that they have to have it contracted out. The banks will not lend you money kasi kung walang what you call PSA or power supply agreements. So chicken or the egg scenario yan for the developer. So what we can do is maybe there's an allowable amount. Pag sumobra ng presyo ng kuryente na galing, for example, coal fire, can we scale down your delivery? Let's say you're supposed to deliver 10 megawatts to the electric cooperative. Baka pwede 5 na muna. And then, 5, tuloy-tuloy pa rin, pero 5. And then you can get from RE, the equivalent 5 megawatts or a cheaper generation product of generation facilities. So, that way, ang sabi nga nila sa akin, I spoke to the GMs, kausap ko ng GM, sabi niya, boss, anong tawag dyan? Nakaposas na kami, nakatali na po kami sa mga rates ng ginawa ng previous board of directors. Kasi alam mo naman, electric cooperative, board of directors, every 2 years, pinapalit yan eh. So, these were 25-year contracts. They've been running for 10 years. They have 15 years to go. Hindi na lang po nila magalaw, natatakot sila, baka ma-ombudsman sila, matanggal sila sa pwesto, mapailan sila na kaso if they get elsewhere. So maybe we can look into that on how we can give them relief from that particular process.
And then, Mr. President, Madam President, and these contracts, they say that they underwent CSP.
The new contracts.
So
Not the old.
but
The old wala.
Okay, the old ones that they're complaining about. What is the quality of the new contracts? Kumusta naman ang new contracts? Do we have feedback
think
on the new contracts?
That I have to ask.
Yun na nga. I mean,
cannot guess.
anticipate.
I cannot guess.
Kasi Mr. President, kung ulit din, umulit din, so that means CSP did not work. Kung umulit din. And then, the boards apparently do not represent, they're supposed to come from the consumers, if I'm not mistaken. Di ba? So, they are supposed to, tama po ba yun? I'm looking at our former chair, but di ba? From the consumers, they're supposed to elect the members of the board to protect their best interests. So,
That is correct, sir.
so
But 10 years ago, in fairness to them, Your Honors, Madam President, in fairness to them, 10 years ago, it was 4 pesos per kilowatt hour for coal generation. So napakababa. At lugi yung RE nun. Mas mahal yung RE nun. Pero this situation na pumalo nga yung coal at we don't see any, actually, Your Honors, we don't see any respite from these high prices of coal kasi bawal na yung Indonesia, pinagbawalan na yung export ng coal.
nila.
Pangalawa, Russia, you can no longer buy from Russia because obviously we will be sanctioned. Pangatlo, I believe countries in Europe, because of the gas blockage from Russia, will now be operating again, once again, their coal-fired power plants, Germany in particular. So bubuhayin na naman nila yung coal-fired power plant kasi wala po silang gas pipeline from Russia. So it's a geopolitical fight. But I don't see any respite from the pricing of coal in the near future. Kaya dapat siguro pagtulungan natin to, pag-usapan natin kasi kawawa naman ang consumer sa Davao, 18 pesos yung bukid no, 18 pesos. Pag tumaas pa yan ng 20 pesos, marami mag-shutdown dyan. Mga mall, hirap na hirap. Mga mini mall. Mga manufacturing plants. Kaya wala masyadong manufacturing. It's all near Metro Manila in the Meralco service area. Kawawa naman yung sa probinsya.
In the case that you mentioned, Your Honor, Mr. President, January, 10 pesos, 62 centavos, then July, 9 pesos, 19 centavos, and then every month nag-i-increase. I thought that every increase should be approved by the ERC. So does this mean that for that particular distribution utility, it already secured a prior approval from the ERC for a monthly increase? Ganun po ba yung nangyari rito?
That's the question I beg to ask as well to the
Yun na,
ERC.
yun
Kasi under some contracts, I'm familiar with some of the other contracts, may allowable rate increase. May adjustments sa forex, cost of fuel or coal, but there's only an allowable amount. In this case, it's 33.5%, an increase in 5 months, 6 months.
In 6 months, yeah.
So paano ba't pumayag ang ERC? There has to, unfortunately, as I said in my speech, Your Honor, my dear colleague and Madam President, walang nagko-complain. Ngayon lang, itong ating mga kaibigan sa Oro Chamber, because I called them.
Yes.
I called up our friend, Robert Pizarro, and I said, Dear Robert, we have to do something about this because all the manufacturing industries and MSMEs will suffer. So, unfortunately, we take it hook, line, and sinker. Wala nagko-complain. Unlike Metro Manila, may increase ng konti, di ba? May consumer group, bumabanat. Pero wala sa probinsya.
And then, Madam President, I heard the Senate President read part of the statement of the Oro Chamber. But pero yung proposals po nila show that they're willing to wait. Parang the benefits of those ideas or proposals are long term, di ba? So ang tanong kasi natin, how do we give immediate relief to our consumers, lalo na yung residential consumers po natin. So, when I heard the SONA of President Marcos and he mentioned his 19 priority legislative measures, isa dun amendments to the IPIRA. But then kulang pa sa detalye, but I'm really for amending the IPIRA, but amending it, to give relief to our consumers. And the minority is eagerly awaiting the details. Ano na ba? Is there a draft already, Mr. President?
No, unfortunately, I do not have with me a draft of the measure. We'll have to await. During our LEDAC, we will have a LEDAC very soon. I can ask the same question to the LEDAC members, particularly Secretary Popolutilla. Maybe we can, if our good colleague, the distinguished gentleman from Isabela and the Republic, Senator Idol Rafi Tulfo, can call a hearing in the next couple of weeks, we can ask that question to Secretary Lutilla if they have a draft
Sige
on
po.
how we can bring down the rates.
Basta kami sa minority, madali naman kami mag-usap na ni Senator Risa, magkape lang kami, minority caucus na yun eh. So, basta sa last caucus namin, basta this amendment to the IPIRA, we're open to this basta for the good of the people, immediate, and then may long term of course, but sana may immediate relief then which can be felt by our people. Kasi when you talk about inflation, kasama ito eh.
Yes.
Yeah, di ba?
Yes.
Kasama na po ito because I think that's part of the basket of goods. When you compute inflation, the power rates that the household pays, kasama yun eh. So, yun po yun. And then, siguro last idea, Madam President, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, our former chairman, electric co-ops are supposed to be non-profit. Non-profit, di ba? So hindi dapat pinagkakakitaan actually ang cash flow ng kanilang members or subscribers, di ba? So board of directors dapat representative of the consumers. So to take trustees, dapat trustees po ba ang tama? Dapat trustees na yata ang tawag sa kanila, no? So look for the welfare of the consumers. So apparently the entire concept is not working. We can say it's not working. So review and then the law governing electric co-ops is not the IPIRA. Ibang law pa rin yata yan, if I'm not mistaken. So tignan na rin po natin yun kasi apparently it's not working. May siguro, I don't know kung overhaul ang kailangan or tweaking of the concept. Pero ganun yung overall concept, if I'm not mistaken, na dapat on paper, gwardyado yung interest ni consumer eh. On paper. So
actually, to add to that, Madam President, I totally agree with my good friend and colleague. Dahil, Madam President, yung electric cooperative, nagiging politika na rin eh. To be honest, no, they run in an electric cooperative. The people choose their members of the cooperative through an election. So, gumagastos din sila. Eh baka bumabawi din sila sa gastos nila dun sa consumer. Maraming ganun eh. And we've heard nightmares of electric cooperatives that have run these cooperatives very, very poorly, and the service is terrible. So I'm not saying all. There are good cooperatives. You know, I was chairman of the Committee on Cooperatives since 2007. I've always been chairman. It's only now that I gave up the committee. But meron talagang cooperatives that give the cooperative movement a bad name. And your father was a believer in cooperatives as well, together with you as a support of the cooperative movement. Kaya siguro tignan natin kung saan natin ma-plug itong mga failures or deficiencies ng mga kooperatiba.
It was actually my grandfather who started the cooperative movement in Cagayan de Oro City.
correct. That's correct.
Pero, di ba, there was a time, Mr. President, where when electric co-ops were not considered strictly as cooperatives under the code. Tama po ba yun? Or has that been remedied now, Mr.
Yes,
President?
that has been remedied na po. Because initially, the law, our cooperative code, which I perfected from your father, it stated there all those who are registered with the Cooperative Development Authority are strictly cooperatives. Those who are not registered with the CDA will not be considered as cooperatives.
Tama.
But and I fought hard for that. As a matter of fact, I suffered in 2013 because the electric cooperatives sort of like got mad at me, got angry for insisting that they must be part of the CDA. So all that is water under the bridge. But what was remedied was the House inserted a provision except for electric cooperatives. So electric cooperatives will still be considered as a cooperative. The reason why initially hindi na ilagay yan is because government still controls. It's not a cooperative per se. A real true cooperative is run by each and every individual member. Sila may control. However, in an electric cooperative, the GM is chosen by the DOE, NEA, under NEA. Even the contracting of energy has to be approved by the DOE, including the terms of reference. So hindi talaga sila free. It's a pseudo-government agency. It's under the NEA. And so maybe we have to review that. We have to look into how we can improve that, even make it more efficient.
But as of today, Mr. President, can we say that electric co-ops are governed by the cooperative code?
Under NEA.
We cannot say that. We cannot
No,
say
sir.
that. Okay.
The CDA
Okay,
has
but-
no control over them, sir. Madam
Sige,
President.
but okay,
But they run to the NEA kasi
And-
whenever they have problems, they do not run to the CDA.
Yes.
There's a few that are CDA registered, about 7,
7. Okay.
na talaga na matigas and they stayed there with the CDA, but the rest are all under NEA. Because
NEA, okay.
there was a threat before, if I can recall, that NEA said, hindi kayo kasama. Kung wala kayo sa amin, hindi ka kasama sa subsidy, yung pailaw program ng gobyerno.
Yun.
Yun.
Then, but which makes me more worried now with the inputs coming from our Senate President. Sinabi niya, the GM is appointed by NEA. Contracts go through DOE. And it's sila ang ugat ng problema. So ang dami ng mata, ilang mata dinaanan ng mga kontrata tapos sasabihin nila, ang problema, kontrata. So something is terribly wrong, Mr. President. I agree with the Senate President for bringing this up, and I choose that one from the legislative agenda of the President of the Republic as one we should concentrate on, amendments to the IPIRA. Agree po ako nun. Medyo maraming problema as we have found out this afternoon. Actually, alam na siguro ng former chairman ng ating energy yan. Alam na niya po yan. So, thank you for the time you've given me, Mr.
And
Senate President.
I'm very excited to work with our Minority Floor Leader for pure bipartisanship on these measures. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr.
Thank you to the Minority Leader. The Assistant Minority Leader is recognized.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Would the good Senate President allow me to just ask for now a few follow-up questions dun sa very important points that he raised
I'll
in
be
his
honored,
privileged speech.
Mr. President.
Salamat kaayo, Mr. President. So, the good Senate President really focused on yung isang nagpapasakit ng ulo talaga lahat natin hanggang sa panahong ito. Actually, in the past 2 decades, yung electric rates talaga, electricity rates. So I'll just ask maybe one or a few follow-up questions about the main points raised by the good Senate President. Bilang panimulang mga hakbang papunta dun sa inaasahan ko din talaga, sabi nga ni Minority Leader, inaasahan din po namin sa minority na magiging substantive, malamang medyo matagal, wag naman masyadong matagal. Sabi nga ni Sen Koko, sana may immediate relief din tayong mairerekomenda bilang Senado. So but for today, Mr. President, good Senate President, just a few follow-up questions in that direction. For one, sabi nga ng good Senate President, mataas ang generation charge. I'll return to that later because that's a secondary point for me. The main point, and I'm so glad, Mr. President, the good Senate President made it, is itinampok nila ang EPIRA. That law, ipinasa ng ating Kongreso a generation ago na ang taas ng pag-asang ni raise niyan kasi maraming pangako sa electrification ng buong bansa at sa pagpapababa ng presyo ng kuryente. Would the good Senate President agree that dito sa mga diskusyon natin sa taas ng presyo ng kuryente at ang paraan para ibaba ang presyo ng kuryente, that in fact, all roads lead to EPIRA or all roads lead back to EPIRA, Mr. President?
Absolutely, Mr. President. Unless we come up with another law in particular to attack on electricity rates. But eventually, that's an amendment to the EPIRA. So, mandatory to the EPIRA law. So, babalik po tayo sa EPIRA law. So, I totally agree, Mr. President, to our distinguished colleague.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Noon, yung EPIRA ay para sa maraming sektor, even after a tumultuous process of passing that bill into law, para siyang nooy mother of many hopes. Pero ngayon, parang naging mother na rin of many problems. Siguro sa usapin din ng implementasyon. Halimbawa, ang Section 23 ng EPIRA was the least cost provision. So yun yung nagtakda kung papaano yung iba't ibang players sa power industry ay dapat in the end makapaghatid ng pinakamurang presyong kuryente sa mga consumers. And interesante rin para sa akin, Mr. President, good President, sa sinimulan namin sa minority na pag-review sa EPIRA, in fact, at napakadetalyadong batas nito, mayroong talagang mga rate setting na nakatakda sa EPIRA for the different providers in the energy system. Meron silang rate setting for private distribution utilities, meron din silang rate setting particular sa mga electric co-ops, and not just one kind of electric co-op, but 7 or 8 kinds ba na mga electric co-ops na may kani-kanyang detalyeng paano ang rate setting. And I'm glad, Mr. President, good Senate President, na itinampok din natin yung papel ng mga kooperatiba, electric co-op sa EPIRA at yung nagiging papel nila ngayon in the whole challenging or even problematic situation. I'm also glad, Mr. President, na binanggit ng good Senate President na sila yung ating champion ng mga kooperatiba dito sa Senado for the past many years. Kasi otherwise parang...
Kasama din po kayo
At
dyan.
kasama, ako po ay salamat.
my senior
good
vice chairman.
SP, Mr. President, ako nga po ay ikinarangal kong magsilbi bilang vice chair kay good Senate President in the past years. I'm assured by the good Senate President making those things well known to us of record again. Kasi otherwise, at certain points sa ating pag-uusap tungkol nito, pwede akong mabahala na baka naha-hot seat yung mga electric cooperatives. And so, I will count on yung assurance ni good Senate President bilang matagalang champion ng kooperatiba, mga kooperatiba dito sa Senado, na kapag pinamunuan tayo ng good Senate President sa pag-review ng EPIRA, posibleng pag-amyenda sa kanya, Posible bang pag-repeal at pagpapanganak ng Senado, ng Kongreso ng isang bagong batas pang enerhiya? Now, the Senate will continue to be fair to the electric cooperatives, Mr. President.
No, I totally agree with the position of the good lady senator. We're not here to dissolve electric cooperatives. Baka sabihin nila, ipa-privatize na natin lahat ng mga lugar. Hindi po. Ang gusto lang natin, tulungan nga natin sila. Actually, yung source ko ng ating mga information ay mga kaibigan kong electric cooperatives. Ang sabi talaga nila, boss, wala na talaga kami magagawa. Nakatali kami sa dating kontrata na wala naman kaming kamangmang dahil ito po'y 10 years old. If we're given the power under the EPIRA to unbundle this and or come up with a sort of formula where in the more expensive we can slow down in the collection of this generation and put in the cleaner, more cheaper alternatives, gusto nila. Pero wala sila magagawa at this point in time. Kaya I assure the lady senator that our amendments to the EPIRA will not cover dissolution of cooperatives because cooperatives per se, if you look at it on papers, kasabi ng ating minority floor leader, napakaganda ng adikain nila eh. Napakaganda. Talagang power from the people. They elect their members of the board from parang districts din yan eh. Districts within the electric generation area or the electric distribution area. And ang nangyayari lang minsan ay napopolitika sila at nag-aaway-away. I do not know because maybe for whatever reason. And that's what we have to strengthen the NEA for. During our time when I was chairman of the the cooperative committee, together with Senator Risa as my senior vice chair, my only vice chair as a matter of fact, in that committee, we mostly tackled the CDA, issues concerning CDA. Bihira po pumupunta sa amin yung problema ng electric cooperative. Pumupunta po yan kay Senator Gatchalian. Yung mga yan. Yan ang mga barkada ni Senator Gatchalian. Although we acknowledge, when he was former chair of the Energy Committee, na yun magiging barkada na po ni Senator Tulfo po yan, Rafi Tulfo. Pero nung panahon po namin ay bihira po sila dumating sa amin. Pero pag naghihiring po kami at kasama po sila, we give them the respect due to them. Alam po ni Madam chairperson, my vice chair, Ma'am Risa, that we also treat them within our hearts as a cooperative. Yun nga lang, yung kanilang regulatory bodies, NEA and the DOE. So sometimes we have to call for a separate hearing when we discuss these issues because CDA has no say about their day-to-day activities.
Maraming salamat, Mr. President, at sa good Senate President. Dagang salamat. Alam ko na ganun ang posisyon nila sa mga electric co-ops and it was just very good to hear it again for the record dito sa ating interpellation sa kanilang privilege speech. Dahil din bukod sa NEA at saka sa DOE, yung isa pang dapat na regulatory power na inaasahan ng lahat ng stakeholders pati ng electric co-op sa implementasyon ng EPIRA at dapat sana ay tulong din sa mga electric co-ops ganapin ang kanilang tungkulin sa ilalim ng EPIRA ay yung ERC. Yes. And there has been at least, Mr. President, one Supreme Court ruling na may finding na nagkulang o nagkukulang ang ERC sa pag-exercise ng mandates nila sa ilalim ng EPIRA pati sa usapin ng pagpapatupad ng least cost provision, even vis-a-vis the electric co-op. So we'll probably talk a lot more about that, Mr. President, good Senate President, kapag nasa committee hearings na talaga at plenary debates. Mabalikan ko lang po yung isang punto na sinayit kong binanggit, Mr. President, ng good Senate President, na mataas ang generation charge and yung pagtalakay nila ng iba't iba pang problema down the line sa buong process ng energy generation, distribution, all the way hanggat makarating sa consumers. Pwede bang i-contemplate, Mr. President, ng good Senate President, na kapag ni-review natin ang APIRA, we would require stronger rules against cross-ownership, Mr. President?
Actually, during the discussions of EPIRA, when I was a member of the House of Representatives, I was one of those who believed that there should not be cross-ownership para sa ganun ay patas talaga ang labanan. Because kung ikaw ay may-ari ng generation facility, tapos ikaw din ang may-ari ng DU, eh, siyempre gusto mo palagi mataas ang benta para mataas din ang kita. So, tama po yan. Para at least yung distribution utility is free to choose the cheapest rates in terms of generation charges.
Salamat po, Mr. President. And I do agree with the good Senate President. In fact, itong issue ng cross-ownership siguro isa sa pinaka-major na basehan ng pagtagumpay sana ng IPIRA, pero yung hindi niya pagtatagumpay ngayon. And I think something na kailangan tignan talaga ng Senado moving forward. Mr. President, binanggit din po ni good Senate President yung tanong natin na who audits. So again, tama din yung sinabi ni good Senate President kanina, yung ERC talaga kailangang mag-step up, kailangang maging totoong regulator ng power sector, whether vis-a-vis yung mga electric co-ops o yung iba pang mga players. Last question for today, Mr. President, good Senate President. Binanggit po ni Senate President yung WESM, yung Wholesale Electricity Spot Market, at yung wish nga nila na pumapel din, gumanap ng papel din itong WESM sa buong bansa natin hanggang sa Mindanao. Is the good Senate President also aware, however, na may mga obserbasyon po na only 10 to 14%, depende kung aling taon ang tinitignan natin, only 10 to 14% ng kuryente na binibili at saka ibinibenta ay galing sa ay ibinebenta at binibili sa WESM, na karamihan daw ng mga kuryente na nakukuha ng mga distribution utilities at pinapass on nga sa atin, mga electricity consumers, galing sa mga bilateral contracts dyan sa generation companies
Tama
na yun.
po kayo dyan.
Napakaliit po.
Tama po kayo dyan. Alam mo yung WESM po, bumaba na rin yung presyo ng WESM because napakaraming kumpanyang generation facilities. Dahil wala na po silang mahal na kontrata, they're forced to sell low on the WESM. So kung dati nagbebenta sila ng may contracted price sila na, for example, 6 pesos per kilowatt hour, dahil natigil na po yung mga kontrata nila, pero nandiyan pa rin yung planta nila, binibenta nila ng mura sa WESM para bibilin po ng consumer dues. So talaga napakababa ng presyo dyan. So we should encourage that because that's where the fight could be. Even RE generators. I mean, if you put up solar power plants now, it's much more cheaper. Dati kasi 2 million per megawatt. Ngayon po, $600,000. Dati $2 million. Ngayon $600,000 na lamang ang per kilowatt. So, per megawatt. So, if you build a 10 megawatt facility, and then ibenta mo ng mura, let's say, 350, kita pa rin sila. 3 pesos 50, 4 pesos per kilowatt hour. And they can compete na. Bakit ka ba bibili sa 10 pesos generation charge? Doon ka na lang sa 4 pesos. Malinis pa. And I'm not talking about just that. Hydropower, for example, yung feed-in tariff is $5.60. So that is still half the price of coal fire, which can be sold in the WESM. That's why I agree with the lady senator. Let's encourage the WESM, not only in Luzon. Ang problema po natin, Ginoong Pangulo, Madam Deputy Minority Floor Leader, Ma'am, is wala po tayong WESM sa Mindanao. Hindi pa nila ini-interconnect. Hindi ko po alam bakit. Matagal na po namin hiningi yan kay Secretary Cusi. Palagi po nangangako siya sa susunod na buwan, sa susunod na buwan, sa susunod na buwan. Hanggang wala na po yung kanilang termino, kanilang administration. I'm hoping that the good Secretary Popo Lutilla during the hearing can give us a definitive answer on WESM. Kasi ang malaga din po sa WESM, yung Transco. Yung Transco interconnection. Because importante dyan, yung hydro plant sa Lanao del Norte, yung Agus, at yung Bukidnon ay connected din sa Davao. Kasi kung hindi, walang connection yun, paano siya bibili yung taga Davao dun sa aming hydro sa atin sa North Mindanao? So, their excuse always is the interconnection between Transco. But we can pressure them to give us a definitive date Di ba? Para we can follow up pag wala pa in 1 year time, 1 year's time, pag budget hearing, tanungin natin sila. Bakit wala pa itong WESM na ito, na Mindanao WESM? Bakit hindi pa connected ang Mindanao at Visayas? Yung Visayas at Luzon. We should have been connected 10 years ago, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. A hydropower plant in Mindanao should be able to sell their power in Metro Manila. Pero wala. Kaya nangyayari na yan, tama sinabi po na ating ginoong minority floor leader, we have supply of power, pero nakatali nga yung deal dun sa mga kontrata. Hindi nila matap yung murang kuryente. Wala din tayong WESM dahil, for example, ako, meron akong ice plant, gusto kong bumili ng mura, gusto kong bumili sa renewable energy power plant. Dahil walang interconnection, hindi ako makabili. Doon pa rin ako sa DU na napakamahal. Magdudusa ako, wala kami magawa. Kaya tama po yan, ma'am. I think we have to look into that point.
Maraming salamat, Mr. President, at sa good Senate President. Dagang salamat for discussing with me on some of these follow-up questions. Gaya ng sinabi ni Minority Leader, naglulook forward po talaga ako at kami sa patuloy na diskusyon para singilin ang mga pangako ng EPIRA at mag-reshape o mag-shape ng bagong batas na magde-deliver talaga ng dekalidad at murang kuryente sa ating mga kababayan. Na kasama po doon, itinataguyod yung papel ng mga electric cooperatives at pinalalaki yung share ng renewable energy sa ating energy mix. Salamat, Mr. President. Dagan salamat, SP.
Maraming salamat po to our distinguished colleague
Yes,
from
the Chair.
Panay and the Philippines.
With the leadership of the Senate President, I believe that we will prioritize the amendment of the PIRA. The Chair agrees that the promise of PIRA was to lower the electricity rates to encourage competition by privatizing napocor power plants. Ang nangyari po ay yung privatization lang ang nangyari. So we believe that with the leadership of Senate President, we will prioritize the amendment. Majority Leader.
Ginoong Pangulo, salamat.
Yes, Mr. President, we have several colleagues of ours who wanted to ask questions. At this juncture, I move that we recognize the gentleman from Isabela, Senator Raffy Tulfo.
The gentleman from Isabela, Senator Raffy Tulfo, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Senate President, thank you for your astute observation in the situation of our energy industry. When it was known by many that I was given the chairmanship of energy, I was inundated by complaints from many consumers of different electric companies from different provinces. I'm talking about not only by the hundreds, but by the thousands. And what are those complaints? Mostly the brownouts. But of course, the issue of lowering electric rates is very important, and I have to tackle that later on. But for now, it's about the brownouts. This has been lingering for a long time. In some provinces, it has been a decade-long problem that hasn't been addressed, and I don't know why. I don't know what the government agencies that regulate these electric companies are doing. Natutulog ba sila sa kangkungan? Nagtatanga-tangahan ba sila o talagang tanga sila? I'm sorry for the word. But nakakapiko na po talaga because when I was still a broadcaster doing this public service show, Wanted sa radyo, day in and day out, I received complaints from regular consumers na yung bang palaging brown out, na piperwisyo na po yung kanilang mga appliances, nasisira po yung kanilang mga refrigerator, meron pa dyan, meron siyang maliit na negosyo, piso net, nagkakabigyo-bagiba na dahil patay sindi yung kanilang ilaw, and then meron dyan yung kanilang mga anak, gusto mag-aral sa gabi, hindi nakapag-aral dahil kailangan bumili ng kandila, sometimes walang mabibiling kandila, so they use their cellphone para mailawan yung pag-aaral ng kanilang mga bata. That should not happen anymore. And adding insult to injury, palagi na nga po nagpa-brownout, there are some electric cooperatives na meron pong kapal na muka na maniningil pa po ng mahal at nagbabanta pa kapag hindi nagbayad ng mahal na singil nila, puputulan po sila ng kuryente. And another insult to the consumers, there are some electric companies like Omerco, what's the name of that company? Sa Ormeco, sa may Mindoro, hindi na po sila nakapagbigay ng maayos na serbisyo sa kanilang bibigyan ng kuryente. Megana pa po silang humingi ng salary increase. When I say salary increase, I'm not talking about cents and pesos. I'm talking about hundreds of pesos. From 70,000, humingi silang increase, gawin silang 150,000 a month.
Grabe.
Hindi ba kakapalan ng mukha yan?
Grabe.
And isa pa, hindi na po silang kapagserbisyo dahil nagka-COVID for the past 2 years. And then come December, then humingi po sila ng bonus. 200% bonus. Napagbigyan. Ang tanong, anong ginagawa ng ERC, ng National Electrification Agency, na siya mga nag-regulate, nag-monitor nitong mga electric cooperative? What are they doing? Why they have approved these increases? Dahil ba sila ay talagang tamad lang? O dahil ba sila ay kaibigan nito mga electric companies? I'm sorry, the good lady Senator Risa here said na kailangan natin tulungan itong mga electric cooperative. And I agree, so that they can give us quality service. I really agree. Pero bago natin sila tulungan, bago sila tulungan ng gobyerno, tulungan muna nila ang mga naghihikaos nating mga consumer. I think that is my stand. Because right now, all over the country, I'm talking about by the dozens of electric cooperatives, are remiss of giving quality service sa kanilang mga consumer at palagi na lang pong brown out. And when it comes to monitoring, I wonder anong ginagawa po ng mga government agencies na sana sila nag-regulate. I don't know what they've been doing at approve lang po sila ng approve. That's why isa po sa mga gagawin ko is kapag nag-renew po ng kanilang mga prangkisa, ito mga electric companies, cooperatives, there has to be a technical review because that has been struck down. Before, nireview po yan ng NEA bago maipasa po sa Kongreso, sa lower house and upper house. Now, wala na po. All or any of the electric companies that would like to have a franchise, all they need to do is just submit to Congress yung kanilang willingness na magkaroon ng electric company, papakita lang na meron silang pera, capable sila na put up a electric company, and then they have a legal technicality know-how. Pero, hindi po kasama sa requirement na itong mga electric company na nag-apply, they should have technical know-how. Because some of them, they don't know what they're doing. Basta andar lang sila ng andar, singil ng singil, tama na. Okay. Now, first and foremost, that has to be addressed, Mr. President. I really understand na kailangan mapababa po natin ang presyo ng kuryente, pero for me, talagang yung brownout has to be addressed because even while we speak, tuloy-tuloy pa rin po pumapasok yung mga complaints sa aking radio program by the thousands na sabi ko kanina earlier, and the complaints are mostly brownout. They didn't say na mahal ang singil ng kuryente, ayaw na namin dahil pagkamahal-mahal. No, they didn't say that. What they've been saying is, walang problema kung magbabayad kami ng mahal as long as they deliver. Yun po yung, Mr. President, ang nakaka-insulto na panahon na para mabigyan natin ng aksyon. Now, doon naman po sa sinasabi ninyo na kailangang babaan po yung electricity rates. Of course, that is very, very important. I think yung ating mga agencies, government agencies tulad ng ERC, NEA, kailangan po siguro reviewin po yung mga contract. Bakit po sila approve na lang ng increase? Justifiable ho ba yung mga increase na ni-request nito mga kooperatiba? Nadi-justify ba? O baka naman, ito mga, I'm sorry, mga taga-ERC at NEA, siguro nakapikit kayo nung inaaprubahan nyo yung request ng rate increase. Now, I think it's about time na kailangan ma-review po ang performance nitong mga kooperatiba, what have been they doing, what are they doing, and what has been done para ma-address yung mga problema, especially sa brownout. Kasi before we talk about them increasing, asking for increase, 18 pesos, may 19 pesos, dapat ma-address nila muna ang problema sa brownout. Mabalik po tayo dun sa, Mr. President, dun po sa Mindoro. Humingi po ng 900 million pesos subsidy ang kooperatiba from the national government. 900,000 pesos na manggagaling po sa gobyerno at yung pera ibibigay sa kanilang gobyerno manggagaling po sa consumer. So before na mabigyan sana yan sila ng ganong klaseng increase, maaprubahan. Pero while I am the committee chairman on energy, haharangin ko po yan. Walang increase na may bibigay o walang subsidy na may bibigay na by the millions, even by the billions sa mga kooperatiba nang hindi po sila talagang nagigisa muna and they have to justify kung talagang karapat-dapat na sila mabigyan ng increase. Now, Mr. President, Mr. Senate President, bilang pagtugon po sa inyo pong privilege speech, this is what I'm going to do. In support of your privilege speech, I have passed just this morning a resolution to investigate the electric cooperatives that pass on the costs to the consumers. I will make sure to hold liable all those in our government that approve without prior proper study to how it affects the consumers of electricity. I will schedule at the soonest possible time the hearing of this investigation in aid of legislation to make sure the Senate as a body addresses the need of the people. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Senate President.
Ginoong Pangulo, napapasalamat po ako sa Chairman ng Committee on Energy sa aksyon na gagawin niya tungkol dito sa usapin pagbaba ng presyo ng kuryente and to give efficient service to the people all over the country, lalo na pagtigil nitong blackouts and brownouts. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Tulfo. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, I just can't help but also comment on the importance of having an effective regulator, which is the Energy Regulation Commission. No? And I think we really need to do something about it. Obviously, I just feel uncomfortable hearing what is happening, for example, in my region, in the province of Nueva Ecija, wherein they doubled the rates of electricity. And I was told, Mr. President, that some rice mills have already closed down. Because you can just imagine if you are dependent on electricity. So this is a big concern. Anyway, Mr. President,
Before we recognize the next interpolator, just to add also, Ginoong Pangulo, sa sinabi ni Chairman, our dear Chairman of the Committee on Energy, Senator Raffy Tulfo, remember that a franchise is not a right. It is a privilege given to an entity like an electric cooperative or a company to run that service. Pag nakita po natin na hindi maganda ang serbisyo na ibinigay ng kumpanya na yan or electric co-op na yan, pwede pong bawiin yan. Because under the creation of the granting of a franchise, it is not a right, it is a privilege. So, ang tinitignan natin, yung overlying theme ay natutulungan ba nila yung tao, ng kahirapan ng tao, nagagampanan ba nila ang kanilang tungkulin bilang isang electric company or cooperative. Kaya nga nung vinito po yung, with due respect, na-veto po yung Davao Power and Light, alam po ni Senator Bato na merong mga lugar doon, at alam ko din po kasi taga Mindanao po ako, na remiss ang electric cooperative, napakamahal. Where in the city, I think it is 9 pesos or 8 pesos. Sa labas po ng service area na yun ay 14 o 15 na. In a matter of 5 minutes, paglabas mo, 15 pesos na kaagad ang increase ng kuryente. Kaya, yung mga iba't ibang mga bayan at syudad sa labas ng Davao City, hindi umaasenso. Yung Sama Island City, napakaganda. We all know Samal is a beautiful place. Pero bakit uh, uh, nakalukluk pa sila sa kahirapan? Di po umaasenso ang Samal. Dahil nga, double ang price ng kuryente sa Samal, and you just go with the Roro across to Davao City, napakamura. Kaya sabi ko nga, even the electric cooperatives, when they apply for their franchise, kasi hindi na po automatic ang renewal ng franchise ng kooperatiba. They were given, under the amendment to the EPIRA, they were given a 15-year leeway. But after that 15 years, malapit na. Ang iba, malapit na mag-expire the next few years. They will have to go back to Congress. It is not automatic that they will be renewed. Sabihin ng congressman doon na, sama ng trabaho nyo doon. Hindi ako papayag. Hindi papasok si private corporation, private company, or another entity. That's why they have to improve their services. And we're not saying that all of them are bad, per se. There are some good ones, but they have to convince their consumers, their representatives, na maganda ang serbisyo nila. Kasi kung hindi, tepok po ang kanilang prangkisa. Pagdating nila dito, hindi sila bibigyan yan sa iba. Di ba po? So, I'm glad that Senator Raffy Tulfo pointed that out. And I'm just saying, as former chairman of the Committee on Legislative Franchises, having a franchise is not a right, it is a privilege given by government. Thank you po.